as the winter goes, how can fish keepers help both their fish and their ponds transition into the warmer weather? You know,
so the spring.
we've talked about going into colder. How do we come out of it and go into warmer?
Springtime is the challenging time of the year. That's the hardest time of year for the pond fish and for the pond as a whole, really, because, you know, like for us, going into lockdown was fairly straightforward. Just right, don't send the kids to school. You can't go to work. You've got to work from home. You can't go out. Going into lockdown was fairly easy. Coming out of it is proving really, really difficult. Yes. What can we do? And it's pond coming back, becoming more active, and the fish altering their physiology to start eating more, to start metabolizing more, consuming more oxygen. The immune system will start to become more active, although some parts of the immune system have still been quite active over the summer. The physiology of the fish is changing profoundly as they're going from, you know, in this rising water temperature. They've also got to then, you know, a lot of goldfish will be then getting themselves ready to spawn. So that's an additional demand on them. That not only have they got to get their, you know, all their digestive system and muscles and immune system and everything more active, but the reproductive system is also taking some of those resources as well, getting the fish ready for a summer spawning. So that's really quite demanding for the fish doing all that. But all the time the fish are then getting themselves more active, the pathogens are becoming more active as well. And we can't think of, you know, things like gill flukes and white spot and you know, these common parasites that we can just see in the skin mucus layer of the fish. These aren't usually exotic pathogens. They're in the pond all the time anyway. And they're just waiting for a time when the fish are susceptible to infection. And in spring is when the fish are generally susceptible to infection.
Oh, wow. Okay. That surprises me.
So yes, it's not that there's, you know, white spots got into my pond, where on earth that come from. It's white spot that was in my pond in the first place has somehow been able to get a foothold and take advantage of the fish. And we can see it appear in springtime because the pathogens become more active, but the immune system is still sort of sluggishly trying to catch up. And there's this sort of, you know, sweet spot of rising temperature when the pathogens are nice and active and the fish are still a bit dopey when they're ripe for infection. So we've got to be looking out for signs of disease in the fish in spring. So we're looking out for visible wounds and cuts and rotten fins. We're looking out for excessively thick mucus coats. We're looking to see if the fish have become lethargic. Are they maybe hanging round filter returns, or you know, if we've increased the aeration, are the fish hanging around aeration devices a bit more than usual? Are they seeming to flick and rub and scratch themselves against objects in the pond as they're trying to relieve an irritated infection? If we're seeing that in our fish, first thing we should do is check the water quality, because all of those symptoms can be caused by too high or too low a pH. They can be caused by too high an ammonia level, too high a nitrite level. So we've got to rule out water quality first of all. And if we know the water quality is okay and we see those symptoms in the fish in spring, then we want to be, you know, we want to be running a broad spectrum anti-parasitic treatment like Medifin to then try and kill off as many of those ectoparasites as possible, to give the fish's immune system a chance to catch up, so the immune system can keep the populations of those pathogens in check, rather than us having to keep doing it with anti-parasitic treatment. So that's quite common in the spring, and that's the thing to be aware of. With the pond plants, obviously they're becoming much more, you know, they're starting to grow again, and things like lilies, that they're all in winter, all of the lily growth would have retreated back to the rhizome, this huge, great sort of parsnip-like structure that where the roots of the lily and all the stems and things come from. So those rhizomes can be quite large, and in early spring can be a good time to be then just carefully cutting those rhizomes into smaller chunks, replanting them into new planting baskets with a proper aquatic plant compost bound up in a bit of hessian, and we can then propagate our lilies. The marginal plants, we can sort of gently break those apart and repot them with a new aquatic plant compost as well. So that can be a good time to get the plants all propagated and divided, so we've got more planting ready for summer.